From Beneil losing to Oliveira, and with it his shot at facing the Russian, to Islam being clueless about who he'll end up facing next. Here's why Beneil Dariush versus Islam Makhachev won't happen. Dariush might just have taken the biggest L ever. The stage was set. All the American had to do was get past Charles, and he was going to be home scot-free. Everything was slowly falling into place, until Dariush ended up losing the fight to Oliveira. What was supposed to be a smooth ride to a title shot turned into his biggest nightmare. With it, he ended up making life a lot harder for Makhachev too. It's obvious that Makhachev wanted Dariush to win that fight, because it would have made the whole process of picking his next title defense a lot easier. Now that things aren't going his way, he's pretty clueless about what to do next. There's a big chance that he'll be forced to defend his title against Oliveira again. Charles has been making his way back to the top of the food chain and was the most recent champ before Islam. With that great of a resume, who wouldn't want to see a rematch between these two? At the same time, you can't just swat Dariush aside. Even though he lost his fight to Oliveira, he's still been on an insane win streak, and that's gotta count for something, right? Apparently, the stars just aren't aligning for this bout. When Dana tried to make this fight happen last year, Rogan was a big part of why it never ended up happening. It's become a small-time trend that whenever this fight is scheduled, something always gets in the way. Back in UFC Fight Night 2022, Islam and Beneil were supposed to face off, but the American was forced to withdraw because of an ankle injury. This led to Makhachev facing Bobby Green and grabbing an easy first-round win. We never got to see the fight we wanted, and the Dagestani got to add another name to his win column. Fast forward to the UFC 274 post-fight press conference. Dana walked to the mic to talk about the next set of potential fights. He mentioned how he really wanted to make the Islam versus Beneil fight happen, but Rogan had grabbed him in the hallway and told him not to do it, and that it wasn't the best decision to make. I'm not gonna lie, that does sound a bit sus. With so much bad luck surrounding the fight's prospects, I honestly don't think it's going to be different this time around. The only difference is that Makhachev actually wants to fight Beneil, but once again, fate stands in his way. What started as an ankle injury has gone all the way to Dariush losing to Oliveira and losing his right to face a champion. It's sad to see, because Dariush is probably the only fighter out there who can end Islam's reign of terror. There are a couple of reasons why this could happen. First off, Benny's a great grappler. Since Islam's whole thing is wrestling, when you put someone who can meet him halfway in the cage with him, things get a little tough. Dariush is known for facing some of the biggest names in the jiu-jitsu community and pulling off some insane moves here and there, and taking home the win. He's definitely not better than Makhachev in this department, but he has enough skill to make it an almost even fight. Besides, his grappling is just one weapon in his arsenal. He's also a pretty set knockout artist. I mean, who could forget when he knocked out Drakkar Klose back in UFC 248? He was so insane in that fight that it got a meme-worthy reaction from the commentary booth. How often does that happen? Thanks to his incredible win streak, Dariush is also a lot more confident in his abilities. A few years back, he might not have been trying all the crazy stunts he pulls in his fights today. This newfound confidence might just be his ticket to the top. His submission game is also pretty sneaky. A lot of fighters don't see it coming and let their guard down. Dariush doesn't rely on submissions, so when he does attempt one, he catches his opponents off guard and makes them tap. Plus, Islam's whole thing is focused on his insane takedowns. Beneil has an 81% takedown defense. Those odds definitely don't work in the Dagestani's favor. Anyways, while luck might not be on Makhachev's side against the American, he's still got Oliveira to defend his title against. The last time Charles fought Islam, things didn't end so well. The fight had barely managed to reach the second round when Makhachev decided to end things and quickly submitted the Brazilian to take home the title. Everyone expected Oliveira to be that guy and challenge Makhachev on the ground. Thankfully, it seems like the Brazilian has another shot to prove he deserves the title. In the post-fight press conference for UFC 289, Oliveira was asked if he was going to switch up his fighting style since it didn't work out in the last fight. Charles said that he wasn't worried about things going wrong again and that he'd just be himself. It's been working great so far, so it should work out pretty great for him in this next fight. An important thing to remember is that Oliveira is coming back from an injury. The reason he didn't fight Dariush back in UFC 288 was because he had to pull out from the fight because of an injury. When he finally came back in UFC 289, people expected him to be slow and sluggish. Thankfully, it didn't look like the injury mattered all that much. Still, it might make things difficult against Makhachev. Speaking of which, we still have to remember that Islam versus Dariush is a fight that could still end up happening. We just need to figure out how it'd end up going. It's not easy to predict this one because there are a lot of factors at play here. Both these guys are pretty evenly matched up when it comes to their ground game. I mean, Islam clearly has an edge in that department. He's being trained by Khabib, who just so happens to be one of the best fighters to have ever done it. Ever since Nurmagomedov stepped into his corner, he's been absolutely invincible. The only fight he ever lost in the UFC was before Khabib came into the picture. So if Beneil does step into the octagon with him, he'll be fighting both Khabib and Islam. Makhachev doesn't have the strongest striking game, and that's one place where Dariush might be able to outdo him. Since he's got some of the best takedown defense I've ever seen, there's a good chance he could keep the fight on its feet. That way, he could try and outbox the Dagestani. Still, there's the fact that Islam's probably got him beat at cardio too. Grappling and cardio is what these guys got famous for. Who doesn't remember when Khabib said all he needed was some water and 30 minutes worth of rest to fight the entire roster? Anyways, you and I can sit here trying to play out these fights in our mind all day. But the fact is that Makhachev doesn't actually have an opponent right now. Y'all might think this makes life easier for the champ, but it's really not that simple. The pressure is mounting, and people are calling for Islam to defend his title. So he needs to pick out an opponent fast and pitch it to Dana. If you look at things logically, the only fight that makes sense right now is a rematch between him and Do Bronx. That's something that'll get the crowd riled up, especially after Oliveira's last performance. Since Dariush screwed up big time, there's almost no chance that Dana lets him off the hook that easy. He's going to need to start back at the bottom and work his way up. I'm not gonna lie, that isn't the best news. Charles facing Makhachev is cool and all, but it's nothing new. Beneil versus Islam would have been a nice change of pace. Both of these dudes are great fighters and know their way around the octagon. They can match each other in most areas of their game, and it would have been a true clash between giants. Charles is just someone who Islam's already beaten, and he probably won't be a heavy favorite coming into this fight. Sure, it'll still be a big enough deal to sell a bunch of tickets, but it definitely won't be awesome enough to set any records anytime soon. We're just gonna have to wait and see what Dana decides to do. What I do know is that we're not gonna have to wait long to see Makhachev defend his title once again. If he wins his next fight, he'll move up to 24 wins, and he'll have grabbed his second title defense. Whichever way you look at things, it's a big win for the fans. So, from Islam being clueless about who he'll end up facing next, to Benny losing to Oliveira, and with it, his shot at facing the Russian. That was why Beneil Dariush versus Islam Makhachev won't happen.